Hello, North Country. Welcome back for another episode of Waite Innovate. My name is Matthew Waite. I'll be your host for the next hour or so. We are here with episode 46, which marks the first episode of season 2. So welcome everyone to 2019. Again, the tag here at Waite Innovate is to highlight and amplify North Country voices of citizens, activists, innovators working to move our region forward. Today we have two of those very guests, Dan Paquin and John Whiteman. Welcome to the show and happy 2019.
Happy 2019.
Happy 2019.
Yeah, cheers.
Thanks for having us.
So for our listeners who may not be familiar with Dan and John, they are the master distillers and co-founders of Mountain Spirit Distilling, which is located at 35 Florida Avenue here in Plattsburgh. I believe they have some distribution through local stores. They make a few local spirits, and we'll get into that in short order. But before we do, let's get a little bit of background. So, again, welcome. And where are y'all from? Are you guys North Country born and raised?
Yeah. North Country, man, that's what.
All right, so let's start with Dan, the elder statesman here of Mountain Spirit Distilling. Where are you from, and where in the North Country did you start out?
I grew up in Malone, moved to the Carolinas mid-high school, and then I did 6 years in the military and ended up coming back to North Carolina, but inevitably moved back home to be closer to family.
Okay, cool. So what were you doing in high school out there in Malone? Were you getting into some trouble? Were you, just with the distillery background, did you start out early, or were you mostly just sticking to academics and sports?
I was pretty straight and narrow.
That's
for,
good.
For quite a while, anyhow.
I figured you had to get into the Navy. And just in talking very briefly, so the Navy was the branch of armed services that you partake in, and you did some really interesting stuff that I think we'll get into a little bit later. But high school, otherwise, just straight and narrow, and didn't really get into any of this stuff until later on in your career.
Right.
Okay, so John, born and raised in the North Country as well, I believe, Beekmantown.
Yeah, I was a little more of a troublemaker than Dan was.
There we go. That's what I was looking for.
I went to Beekmantown, loved it, graduated, moved away to Statesboro, Georgia, where I went to technical college, came back, worked up here for a while, and still here, and got the business rolling, so.
Yeah, cool. So both of you, it sounds like, born here, went away for a little bit, kind of tested the waters, and eventually ended up coming back. Not too dissimilar from my own story. So it sounds like a little bit different backgrounds then. So John, you went off and did some schooling down in Georgia. Dan did some more of the service to the country through the Navy. So let's get into that a little bit further. So what was it about going down to Georgia, John, that kind of appetized you?
I did have family down there. And I was fortunate enough to be able to live with them, basically, somewhat rent-free. Like I helped out and everything like that. But it was
the economics helped.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a great college, though. It's called Ogeechee Technical College.
Can you spell that for me? No,
O-G-E-E. Ogeechee. No, they're really great down there. I met a lot of good people. I was treated with Southern hospitality for sure. Yeah, it was very nice.
Yeah, there definitely does seem to be a history of Southern hospitality and taking people in, and obviously a history of a lot of different things down in Georgia. Moonshine, I think, was one. Was that something you learned down there, obviously, to forecast where we're going here?
Not technically. I had knowledge prior to moving down there, but I was very fortunate enough to come across some old stills that my neighbor, Clay Beaver, took me to on some back property or whatever, and he just told me to walk down to the riverbank. Once you hit the river, take a right, and I'll meet you at the other side. And that was it. He didn't tell me what I was gonna go after. There's rattlesnakes all over the place, water moccasins, and came across two old stills with holes in them and everything, where the ATF obviously bashed them in and stuff.
Interesting.
A bunch of old bottles everywhere. It was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, some neat history there.
Yeah.
And so at that time, did you know what you wanted to do with your life? Did you have a path? What were you studying specifically?
Yeah, I was studying air conditioning technology, or HVAC.
Oh, yeah.
Refrigeration and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Planned to move back home, and that's where I worked for J. Hogan Refrigeration and met Dan.
Yeah, I think we'll come back to that in short order.
Yeah.
Just trying to get a little bit more background on Dan here then. So out in Malone, graduated high school.
I didn't graduate.
Okay.
No.
So what ultimately was your decision then to leave high school?
No, I graduated. I just graduated
Oh,
in North Carolina.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So yeah, I moved mid-high school and went to Smithfield Selma Senior High. And so I graduated from down there, and 6 days later I was in boot camp for the Navy. So,
Was that an easy decision for you, going into service?
yeah, I knew I wasn't really college bound, just because I liked school. I was fairly well at school, but I just wasn't in love with it.
Okay.
So it wasn't something I wanted to continue on with. And so I ended up joining the military because I knew that at least I'd be, working, supporting myself and go see the world a little bit. And I ended up doing 14 months in school, so that was interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the Navy is a really amazing way to get out and view the world. I'm just kind of interested then, is there a family history with the military, or was it just something that you just said it just makes sense based on the reasons you just gave?
Yeah, my dad did the Army Reserves, and so it definitely wasn't, out of my mind that military was something I wanted to do. But then just the technical aspect and the travel aspect of the Navy appealed to me. So.
Okay, yeah, that was my next question, was why the Navy, but yeah, the travel makes a whole lot of sense. And what were some of the fascinating, interesting places you got to visit?
The list is pretty long.
Yeah. What 2 or 3 stand out?
Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand.
Okay, so Asia is pretty happening.
Yeah, it was pretty much Southeast Asia. I did 3 tours in the Persian Gulf, so spent a lot of time there too. So.
Okay. And in our little pre-interview here, I came across something interesting that part of your occupation or your job was to work with cryogenics, which was kind of fascinating to me. Specifically, tell us a little bit about what exactly you're doing with cryogenics and how it relates to military service.
Okay, so cryogenics in the Navy, the uses are aviators breathing oxygen, medical breathing oxygen, and for liquid nitrogen, really used very little as a liquid state. It was mostly produced for gaseous use for high pressure tests on like some aircraft systems, and they use nitrogen to buffer the they call it a water break for the catapult system. So.
Yeah, neat. So you're actually taking air, essentially, cooling it to very, very low temperatures to where it actually changes states from its gaseous form to its liquid form, and you can then use that to help the military in a number of different applications. It sounds like long-distance aviation is one of those where they can freeze liquid, put it into, or oxygen, put it into a liquid form, and then travel long distances. So pretty interesting how you're able to make this work for the military and serve the country at the same time. And then as we find out, we were able to put this to a practical application, and I think a lot of people here in the North Country are going to start to learn more about what you're doing. So let's then move forward to Hogan Refrigeration then, where the two of you met. Talk a little bit about your paths there, because I think you guys look like you're from maybe different generations. So how did each one of you come to and I think that's not,
He can always be my dad. Right?
Well, I think that's listed in the North Volume magazine, which we'll come to. I think it's cool that you have a little bit of a different generational influences here. So how did the two of you both come to be in Hogan Refrigeration about the same time? I imagine took you maybe a little bit longer to get there, Dan, than John.
Well, I've been with them now 13 years, and so I already had refrigeration experience before I came up here. And when I was looking to move from the Carolinas to here, J. Hogan was one of the only refrigeration companies that did ammonia refrigeration, which is primarily what I like to do.
Okay.
So it was, a natural choice for me to pursue that, and luckily they took me on, and it's been pretty good ever since.
Yeah. What is it about ammonia that draws you to that?
It's bigger refrigeration. It's more industrial.
Okay.
So, you're not dealing with really small equipment, and it's just what I like to do.
Okay. And how about John? What brought you to J. Hogan?
Well, let's see. Well, I used to ski a lot with one of the owners, and he actually told me to come work for him and see how I like it, and then go to college if you feel you like it, and we'll go from there. So I did just that, and they hired me right back and stuck me with this guy.
All right, cool. Yeah, so then Both of you now have the title of Master Distiller. I'm kind of interested in how that process plays out. And let's start from the beginning. I mean, how did the two of you kind of realize that you had a similar hobby? I imagine it started as both of you a little bit of a hobby as far as the distilling of spirits.
Right. So
Beer.
yeah,
Brewing beer.
Okay.
both of us
Both
made
craft beer.
Yeah,
Cool.
we both made beer, and I dabbled with a little bit of wine too, and John made hard cider, and so we talked about it some, and then while John was off to college, actually, I had already pursued distilling, and so I had already started dabbling with the distillation a little bit, and so anyhow, he came back from college, and so I was pretty full-blown making moonshine a little bit at home, and so then we talked about it, and I was like, yeah, come over, I said, we'll start doing a little something together. So, we did, and I guess the rest is history, so they say.
Yeah, collaboration is something we love here at North Volume, right? Getting people together with similar interests and working through situations. So, did you kind of jab each other and say, oh, yours is okay? And I mean, how did you guys kind of push each other? Or was it both kind of just a mutual appreciation of what you guys were doing?
Pretty much a mutual appreciation.
Yeah, pretty much everything we did. We would critique our own work, and we still do. We have a couple of interesting things at the distillery, and, we kind of have a statement, we shall rise above our mistakes. And so whenever we make a mistake, we openly admit it, and we say, oh, that's my bad. And
they're learning experiences,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Is what it is. If you don't fail, you'll never succeed.
Yeah, no, I love that. So you've been doing it for a little while then, what, 13 years or so at Hogan. But when did you first do your first batch of, let's say, beer?
Oh, probably 99.
Okay, and then when did you start to transition into harder spirits?
Well, I actually left the home brewing thing. I did home brewing for a couple of years and lost interest in it. And then I didn't touch it for a while until I got back up here and actually did a job at North Country Malt. And I was doing a job up there and kind of sparked the interest again, so I started doing some stuff from whole grain, which was much more fun, gave you a lot more depth. You could do a lot more interesting beer, doing it from whole grain instead of kits, which what I originally started with was kits.
Yeah.
And so then I just did some wine just because people always ask you about, have you ever made wine? So I was like, well, I should try that. And I actually made a potato wine that was pretty interesting.
Nice.
I'd like to do something again with that.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, here at Waite Innovate, we love that, right? Just taking the initiative and doing something. And yeah, you're going to make mistakes along the way, but just do it and throw yourself out there. So that's really, really cool. And so then the two of you eventually kind of started to appreciate each other's work. How about yourself, John? What was that process like? You're a little bit younger. How long have you been involved with home brewing and then into this process?
Started making beer when I was 15. My parents weren't too happy with me.
I was going to say, how did that happen?
Yeah, but they couldn't really do much about it because it's illegal for me to buy it at that age, but it wasn't illegal for me to make it at that age. So
a young lawyer.
Little loopholes.
Yeah, exactly.
I love loopholes. But no, actually, I got interested in making beer and liquor for my grandfather, and I found all those brew notes and stuff, all the equipment, and I started talking to him about it a little bit. Gave me some pointers, and he just was basically, you got the recipes, do it, wing it, So I kind of started doing my own stuff, bought a couple kits. Then my father actually started to get involved a little bit. He sparked a little interest in himself as well. Until I started making liquor, then he wanted nothing to do with it.
That's funny.
I built my still at 18.
He enjoyed the craft beer, but then it got too hard for him.
Yeah, he didn't like that illegal activity, I guess you'd say. But that's just the outlaw in me.
Yeah, I know there's definitely something to that, right? I mean, historically, I think it's kind of crazy looking back that we did have prohibition for a lengthy period of time, but. Yeah, there's certainly a stigma around alcohol and consumption, but I'm sure you guys are obviously, advising drink responsibly and all that type of stuff. And
there's still definitely a stigma around distillation.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because talk about Waite Innovate again. I think you guys are the first, or at least recently, to be a distillery here in Plattsburgh. So that's another something
we're
innovative.
We're the first distillery in Plattsburgh.
Yeah, there you go.
in
So
Clinton County alone, for sure.
Yeah, it's
So-
definitely
groundbreakers and trailblazers right here on Waite Innovate.
right. Yeah, it's definitely a lot tougher as far as the laws and everything with distillation versus regular beer or even the wine. Some of those regulations are lifting or changing, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting a little bit easier to navigate through. But to start with, as far as the town of Plattsburgh, because we're actually in the town, the zoning department stuff, they didn't know what to do with us because nobody had ever opened a distillery. So they kind of said, well, I guess we'll treat it like a brewery, and that should cover us.
Yeah. Did it?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
good.
for the most part. I mean,
Zoning wise, we're covered for sure.
Yeah. I did
So
notice a
very-
little something about the New York law. It's kind of similar to craft beer, and I think you're supposed to get 75%, or at least a significant amount of your raw materials from in New York State.
Yeah,
So you guys are working.
75% New
Yeah,
York
we're-
State ingredient.
yeah, we're mandated 75.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you guys have been able to check off all those legal boxes and all
Oh
that.
yeah, of course. That's easy.
got the lawyers involved, and everything's cool.
Yeah, compared to the rest of the license, that's the easiest part.
So as this evolves into distilling, again, a little bit coming down to the master distiller, is there actually any type of certification, or is that just something that once you're able to, put it out, it's like, well, look at this, we'll drink it. I'm a master.
Right.
More the latter.
Pretty much.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
We've been doing it for so long. I don't know.
Is it just the two of you for Mountain Spirit, or is
Yes.
there? Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So a pretty small organic organization you've got going on here. So it started out with craft beer, moved into some moonshine, and then eventually, let's talk about the monetization and kind of the building a brand. How did that start? Who was the first one to kind of say, you know what, let's see if we can commercialize this?
That was me.
Okay.
We definitely wanted to pursue a license, and I knew that in order to get a license, it really has to be a business. I mean, it's not going to be, just a piece of paper on the wall in your garage and, yeah, I got a license.
Right.
So then we started, looking into what we had to do to, get the licensing, had to look for a location. We found a location. We actually held our building for a little bit over a year before we even got licensed completely. I think we're like a year and 3 months, and then we finally got our license. So, that's a year and 3 months worth of rent, insurance,
Yeah.
everything.
And was this at the 35 Florida?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so Clinton County is who we lease from, and they've been great to work with as far as our building. So it's worked out really well for us as far as the location.
Yeah, let's talk about the location because I think it's a little maybe out of the way. When I first saw Florida Avenue, I was like, do I know where Florida Avenue is? And now looking at the GPS, you guys are pretty convenient for a lot of our listeners. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
just outside the city. So, well, you said town of Plattsburgh, probably very close to
Right on
the...
the line.
Arizona on the other side of Arizona. Is
So
the
right
city of
across the
Plattsburgh.
street.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And so, yeah, I mean, just looking at, so let's talk about that. So it's right off Arizona Avenue on the new base, stone's throw from the airport. So
Yes.
best place to access you is just go, if you're going by the airport, turn on to Arizona Ave, and then a couple seconds away from there.
Yeah, it's right at the railroad tracks is Florida Street or Ave.
And I think one of the interesting things is you guys, your hours are somewhat limited. So talking about rent and all that stuff, it sounds like that's kind of an interesting aspect because you guys are you working most of the time and then just open up 2 days a week? I think it's Fridays from 5 to 9, Saturdays from noon to 9.
Yes.
You just kind of open the doors, but otherwise, are you guys in there most of the time working and
Yeah,
getting
so
the?
you kind of don't want to do a lot of production when you have clientele there, just for safety reasons and whatnot.
Okay.
So we try to keep that to a minimum, but there are some days that we are running the still or we're mashing in, and you just have to be a little careful sometimes. But
Yeah, we're probably going to expand some of that. And when we're doing a process that's, people might find interesting, we're probably going to start throwing something on Facebook and say, hey, if you're interested, swing on by and check it out, because we're fine with that. It just depends on what the process is.
no.
Obviously we don't want there's certain safety aspects that, when you're distilling, I mean, you are distilling alcohol that is extremely flammable and explosive.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting because obviously you mentioned that previously you were working on making things cold. Now you kind of switch the other way and you're distilling things and making them much hotter. And I think as our listeners probably know, yeah, liquor can be flammable. So you got to watch out. Have you had any, what kind of liability insurance do we have here? No, I'm just kidding.
A lot.
Oh, that's funny. So no, I definitely want to check this out and very interested to make it down to Florida. My first interaction with a distillery was actually on our honeymoon about 2 years ago. My wife and I went out to Sonoma Valley, and there was a pop-up distillery, and it was so cool. I mean, just a lot of different samples of, your whiskeys, your vodkas, your gins, and so that's kind of a cool, neat experience. So what kind of samples do you offer? If people stop by on a Saturday or Friday, what should they expect when they walk through the doors?
Yeah, so we can give a sample of our products. It's like a 1/4 ounce is what the TTB says is a sample amount.
I remember going out to California. It was like these little thumbnail.
Yeah, it's actually the right amount if you're looking for the taste.
Right. Yep.
So you're trying to actually just get the flavor. You're not really trying to do a whole shot.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, that being said, in our tasting room, our license also allows us to make mixed drinks by the glass.
Neat.
So
Using our products.
Right.
using our
Okay.
products.
Fascinating.
So
So so let's talk about the product then. It looks like on your website I see at least 3. We've got Adirondack Glow, which is a white whiskey. Working Man's, which is spirit distilled from grain and cane with natural oak flavor added. In researching it, I actually came to find out that apparently Adirondack Glow and Working Man are really the same original product. It's just the way that you age it is different. And I think we'll probably get into that a little bit. And then Driven Snow is a whey vodka with, I think, some things coming along around the corner. We've got, is it Morningwood, a coffee-flavored vodka?
Yes.
We've got some things coming around, but for the most part, we've got the 4 products right now then?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, cool. So as far as, coming in, you can, I'm guessing, buying it. How do they purchase these fine spirits?
Well, you can purchase them at our location at 35 Florida Street. We're at some various liquor stores in Plattsburgh. Gaiosis Wine and Spirits, Liquor and Wine Warehouse, Dame's Liquor Store. We're up in Malone at the Jug. In Elizabethtown, we're at Bouquet Liquor Shop, Lake Placid, the Smoking Cork, Terry Robards Wine and Spirits, and we're hoping this year to get to a much more vast distribution.
Yeah, so much more to come. But right now you've got a staple of at least 4, and if people stop by, they can probably buy, what is it? Is it a 750 or a liter?
Yeah, 750 or 375 in only our whiskeys.
Okay.
Yep.
And then mixed drinks as well. Explain it to me how that would work if I stop by with, some friends or family just to enjoy, a vodka, tonic, or cranberry, all that type of stuff.
Cranberry, orange juice. We make a great eggnog with our Morningwood vodka. Do Working Man's and Coke, Working Man's and ginger, so whiskey ginger, whatnot.
I just tried for the first time over the holiday season Captain with eggnog, and it was actually amazing. So
wow.
I'm very interested to check some of this stuff out.
Yeah.
So very, very cool. And it sounds like one of the things that you guys are offering is it's a very unique product, and you seem to create it in small batches. So it's almost kind of an artisan thing you got going on down there. Was that part of the game plan to kind of, as far as supply and demand goes, to keep supply somewhat limited? So, people are more interested in keeping the demand high. And
right. We're probably going to scale up production considerably, I think, this year, just because with the way that the taxes work out for us this year, 2018, 2019 is a good year for distillers to kind of stockpile.
Okay.
Just because of, some excise tax changes that'll be coming in 2020.
And that's got to be difficult, right? I mean, as someone who runs their own business with a law firm, being the chief financial officer, the COO, chief operating officer. I mean, you guys kind of have to do that. And, do you try and reach out and leverage a network and communication, or do you do a lot of it on your own, kind of parsing through these regulations, which I imagine can be somewhat esoteric and boring from time to time?
Yeah, we both have our
sources
and places to get information. John does a lot of the regulatory paperwork for the TTB and for the Liquor Authority. I do most of the financial as far as taxes and all the kind of balancing of the books. My wife helps me with a lot of that too, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah, no, it takes a village. So, again, let's get back to the product because that's something I'm quite interested here. So, Adirondack Glow, can you tell us a little bit about what the characteristics of that are? It's a whiskey?
Yes, it's a white whiskey. Okay, so it's a bourbon recipe. So it's corn and malted barley. But we call it white whiskey because when it comes off the still, it's virgin, it's pure. It's at its most purest form. And then once you put it in a barrel or, as what we do, oak chips, that'll turn the color and flavor and all that. So it's a totally different product once you age it. But yeah, Adirondack Glow is just it's a pure product.
Yeah, it'd be our version of a moonshine, but since it's a bourbon recipe, a lot of people have commented that it has a lot more depth than your average moonshine. I mean,
yeah, I would imagine.
You can definitely get the corn and the malted barley flavors, from the ingredients we use. So.
And I'm a bit of a neophyte to this, so you'll have to bear with me a little while. So doing a little bit of research, bourbon, I know there's a lot of debate about what makes a bourbon. I think specifically it's there's the whole geographic area, right? I think some people are historically it was supposed to be in Kentucky, but I think things are changing. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And you're supposed to age it for between 3 and 5 years.
Right, so
give me the lowdown here, the experts.
Right, the whole geographical thing. Okay,
yeah.
You can. Okay, first of all, bourbon only can be produced in the United States. If you have a Kentucky bourbon or Tennessee bourbon or whatever, it has to come from those locations. See, if we made a bourbon, we couldn't call it a Kentucky bourbon because it's not manufactured.
Okay, but you could call it a bourbon. I thought
Correct.
Historically it had to be a bourbon. It had to be from like one of those areas. But now it's just Kentucky bourbon or Tennessee bourbon.
Yes.
Okay, great.
But the other law is once that whiskey goes in a virgin white oak barrel, it cannot be used.
Okay.
Brand new.
Right.
You cannot touch it or add or subtract anything to it for 2 years minimum to be considered a bourbon.
Okay.
Yeah, there's other requirements with the with the material, the grain list. So you have to be 50% corn, and
it might be 51%.
51,
yeah.
right.
I think that's what I saw.
Yeah.
We'll be technical here.
Over 50%. It could be 75%.
50.01%.
Right.
Maybe that's
so
enough.
Anyhow, then there's some proof things, like it can't go in more than a certain proof.
I think it's
120.
20, yeah. It can't be, when it comes off the still, it can't be more than 160 proof.
Right.
Yeah.
But it can't go in
Which is
over
what,
120.
80% alcohol?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it can't go in at a minimum. Is there a minimum?
No, but it can't be above 120
Okay.
when it goes in the barrel.
Yeah.
It changes in the barrel.
Yeah, for sure.
Depending on where it's being stored, based on humidity, airflow. Sometimes the proof goes up, sometimes the proof goes down. It just depends, on conditions around it.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because, I obviously I go to the craft beer places around here, and Oval, every once in a while, they'll have a Ruby that's like a 6.5, and then the next week it'll be 7.2. So it is interesting that there's these variances, and it sounds like it's dependent on a number of different conditions.
Mm-hmm. As far as aging, yes.
At this point, though, have you gotten it mostly down to a science? Or are they coming out pretty much the same, or you still have to deal with some variation?
No, we're not barrel aging right now.
Oh, okay.
We're
Okay. So
aging
we'll still wait on the back end for that.
We do have a barrel set away that will eventually become something. But no, right now we're aging on American white oak chips. So it's the same material that the barrels are made of, and it is charred. So we get the same flavor profile as, barrel aged, but just in a quicker fashion. So that allowed us to put out a product, that was similar to what most people would recognize as a whiskey and a bourbon.
Yeah, because that's come up in conversations where I think I'd mentioned, I'm having these guys on the show, and I've been, went to, I think, saw you guys at Cornell Cooperative. You guys had some sampling, and people are like, well, what do they offer? And I said, well, I think they have a whiskey. And they're like, whiskey? How are these guys pulling off whiskey? And of course, going to North Volume magazine, I was able to figure that out, that it's actually a really innovative approach that you guys are taking with this chip process. So that's really neat to me. So you're actually, you're kind of artificially moving forward that timeline. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's fair to say.
I want to say artificial. Is that right?
Well,
We'll say naturally.
It's all natural for sure.
we're kind of cheating the clock a little bit.
It's just more surface area is all it is.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it more. It's somewhat natural because you're talking about oak chips,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's, I guess, accelerating that flavor profile.
Correct.
So,
Yeah. Right.
so the flavor profiles may be artificially being accelerated, but otherwise, it's a natural product.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Without a doubt, though, I mean, not to dismiss the fact that there is value in aging. There's changes that the whiskey go through in actually physically aging in the barrel that we're not achieving. I mean, it's a really good product. I'd actually sit it next to pretty much anything and not be embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
So that being said, definitely there's value in aging too. A whiskey's interesting. A lot of people don't realize, but you could actually age a whiskey for a very short period of time and call it a whiskey.
Okay.
Whether it would be a good whiskey or not is a different story, but there's actually some whiskeys out there that are briefly aged in a barrel for, as little as 6 months, or even I've heard as little as 90 days.
But technically speaking, you only have to age it for. It just has to hit the barrel, and that's it.
Yeah.
Once it goes in the barrel, it can come right out.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I enjoy this, because I think there is a lot of misinformation as it relates to this stuff, and that's why I appreciate having you guys on here as experts to kind of explain all this stuff to me. I know I'm hearing a lot of good things. Zach Lattenville was on another podcast, Craig Cast, and was very effusive and very complimentary about the work of the whiskey, I think it was. But,
cool. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah.
Right on.
So let's move on to Driven Snow vodka. So I noticed a little bit different than traditional vodkas. I think most of them historically are potato derivative. This one, you guys used whey. Can you explain a little bit about that and that decision and what the differences are?
Sure. I actually came up with the idea of using whey. Whey is a product of the cheese industry, and the whey that we get is a very high lactose, and so we use that milk sugar and convert the lactose to fermentable sugars using an enzyme. And once that's fermentable, obviously we ferment it with distiller's yeast and triple distill it, and that becomes Driven Snow. So I found a couple of distillers that were doing it in Europe, and I thought it was pretty interesting, so I started researching what it would take to do so. And I actually called a enzyme company in California, and they kind of set up a team. They called it the vodka team. And so they looked at some different enzymes that would work and some things that they could do to make it work with the kind of pH levels and everything we were going to be working with. And they sent us an enzyme, and it worked, and
It kicks ass.
Yeah, that's really, really neat.
We've been going forth ever since.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this is very unique to the United States. Do you know of anyone else in the U.S. that's doing what you're doing?
I actually haven't researched it that extensively. Once I kind of...
So groundbreaking stuff here. This is really, really neat.
Well, once I figured out what we needed to make it work, I kind of quit researching. I had the nuts and bolts I needed, so I just put it together. So
Interesting. Man, that's really, really cool. But you don't really, I can't imagine you taste much of the cheese or anything like that?
There is actually definitely
Okay.
a distinct flavor that carries over, even though it's triple distilled. There's kind of a sweetness on the backside. What's interesting is the enzyme that we use in all enzymatic conversion of lactose. Pretty much 50% of it's directly converted to glucose, which is a preferred sugar for yeast. The other is gallolactose, which is a still pretty complicated sugar. And the gallolactose, we don't bother with any other enzyme conversion to get the gallolactose to be fermentable. We just leave it. And so that doesn't really ferment out. So some of that carries over through the still. None of the sugars carry over, but some of the flavor of the gallolactose carries over, which is kind of cool because people that like White Russians kind of appreciate the fact that there's that creaminess a little bit in the vodka. I mean, it's amazing. It's crystal clear, and 100 proof vodka, but there's definitely a unique flavor there.
So if any of our listeners are going to the Lebowski Fest, they can bring some and make some pretty kick-ass White Russians.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
For sure.
So let's talk about another common ingredient, water. I would imagine water is pretty instrumental in what you do. How is the water quality here? Was that part of your decision-making process and where you kind of laid down? Were you looking at water, or what type of...
It was a concern at one point. I mean, we were getting our water from an artesian well, and it's it's the best water around. But honestly, we use town water.
It gets expensive at some point, I would
we
imagine.
actually found that the town water is of good enough quality that we're fine with it. Now, we don't, however, proof with town water just because of what little bit of chlorination they have to do. You wouldn't want that in a proofing water.
Okay.
So it's fine prior to distillation. So like we mash in with it, we use it for all our
You
cleaning.
boil with it. I mean, when
Right.
you're making your mash, you're essentially boiling the water. So
Yeah, maybe if you can just help me through that process, because again, this is kind of a case of first impression for me. I've always enjoyed craft brew, didn't know much about it until we had Dan Badger on, and obviously enjoy a libation here or there, but I really know almost nothing about the process. So from raw material to the final product, can you walk us through that? How long that takes, or a little bit of the process?
Sure. Go ahead, John.
all right. I don't know. Okay. So whiskey, for instance, we cook our corn first, so we get it nice and hot to where the kernels are almost mushy or kind of splitting themselves. Then we cool it down a little bit, throw some enzyme, let the enzyme convert a little bit. Then we sparge off the grain, throw it back in, heat it up to around 150 degrees. Then we add our malt in, let that cook for a couple hours, sparge the grain off again, and throw it in, add some sugar, send it off to the fermentation tote, and pitch yeast.
So how does that work with the grain then? You're taking the grain out at some point and then reintroducing it?
No, okay, so you're extracting, the first step, you're extracting the corn off of the liquid. So you're separating the two. You take that liquid and you put it back in your mash tun. That corn, that gets placed in a separate container.
Byproduct. That's waste.
Yeah, that goes to a local farmer.
Okay.
Then
That much is similar to Dan Badger. Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
And then so we throw our malt in, same thing, cook it, extract it, separate the liquid into the solids. Solids goes to a farmer, liquid goes back in our tank, and that's your mash. So there's sugar in there that's ready to be fermented.
Yeah, the only sugar we use though is just corn sugar. So we use pure dextrose.
Okay, cool. And then you mentioned triple distilling. Is that exactly what it sounds like? It's just 3 iterations of the same distilling process?
Exactly.
Yes.
And what is it about the third time? I mean, we all know the third time's a charm. I mean, is it from the the making whiskey or vodka? I mean, is triple distilled pretty common for vodkas or whiskeys?
Yes.
Pretty
Okay.
common. Pretty
Okay.
much.
There's some that are like, 7 times
Yes,
distilled?
They can be done that many times.
That's crazy.
The thing about triple distilling is typically in order to get a truly neutral spirit, it takes 3 times to get it that pure.
When you say neutral, are you talking pH levels or just the taste is...
Neutral as far as the taste. In order to make a good vodka, it has to be pretty neutral. Because really vodka is basically just pure alcohol and water. So we run everything at 190 proof when we're distilling the vodka. And we found there's a very small window. If we get much less than 190 proof, you actually carry over some, carryover flavors. And we really don't want that much carryover flavor with vodka. You want it to be very clean.
Yeah, as in reading North Volume Magazine, which is through North Volume Media here, they did highlight you guys, which I think we'll talk about a little bit, which is a really good spread. A really cool video too, about a 2-minute video that I think helps show the process a little bit.
Yes, correct.
For our listeners, they'll want to check that out. But there's a quote here, I believe, from John saying that. Essentially, I'll paraphrase here, that vodka is the purest form of alcohol, and there's nothing purer than driven snow. So that's kind of what you're trying to get.
Man.
Yeah, no, I love that. That was great stuff. So when people get driven snow your vodka, it's going to be very, very pure and have a neutral taste, and then you'll be able to add or put whatever you want in to make it, to give it that flavor that historically most of our people will be familiar with. So excuse me, very, very cool then. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So you guys have been highlighted in a number of different publications, not just North Volume Magazine, which has a great video, some photographs, an article. Also, I think we have here Strictly Business publication, Northern Exploring, HGL, Due North Magazine. So you guys, I guess we'll rewind a little bit. Started in 2016. Brick and Mortar was 2017. It's pretty amazing that we're here, our first podcast in 2019, and you guys have really gotten a lot of publication and press around what you're doing. So obviously you're doing something right. And I think in reading up, John's, is he part of the social promotion, or are you both working to get that word of mouth and just to market
both.
it?
It's
it's
actually
a team effort.
It is definitely a team effort.
Yeah, we both pretty much are involved in all of it.
Yeah.
We've been also on the local news.
Yeah.
They've been pretty good about that too. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Ended up, meeting some of the local newscasts at a tasting that we were doing downtown, and sure enough, on our 1-year anniversary, News Channel 5 came by and did a nice interview with us, and they're all about trying to promote as well. We've also done some fundraisers. We did a beard competition on December 1st. And that was to raise money for the cancer center here at CVPH.
I did see that on my social media. I was busy that day, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a really good feeling.
Yeah, those are pretty.
Did Lowell Worcester make it down? He's got a pretty epic beard.
He did, yeah.
All right, cool.
Didn't win, though.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, those are fun events. I mean, those are things that, get people out, get people doing stuff, and also raise a little money for a good cause.
Yeah, right. I mean, check off all those boxes. And then as far as social media, that's probably something that in the last 5-10 years, it's just kind of everywhere. So you guys, are you on Instagram?
Basically just Facebook.
Okay, just Facebook for now.
Yeah, I don't know. I should get on Instagram a little bit, but
the easy thing about Instagram, from someone who's again pretty an amateur at a lot of these technological things, is I think we all know Facebook and Instagram are owned by the same company. So a lot of times, what I do is go on Instagram, and you can actually set a little setting where it just shares on both. Yeah. I find that to be, with doing this podcast, promoting it, is a lot easier because you can kind of kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. But Instagram, the kids love the Instagram. So, social media marketing is something that I think everyone knows that they need to do, but it's kind of a new landscape. So trying to navigate that and meander through that has been difficult.
Yeah,
but
it's pretty tough to manage social media and also get your tasks done every day. And dude.
Yeah.
As we talked about, being a small business owner, I mean, you got a lot of hats that you have to wear.
Absolutely.
For sure.
There's only so much time in a day.
Yeah.
All right. So what other types of marketing are you doing? Are you getting out there doing events? Are you going out and doing tastings in the community?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've done quite a few at liquor stores, and we've also done events at our distillery. That's something that we're going to continually expand on. We're trying to come up with something new. Pretty much every month we'd like to have something. Just to keep people going, especially now we're getting into the real heart of wintertime, and everybody kind of hibernates and doesn't want to get out, so we're looking for ways to kind of guilt people into getting out of the house.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is the new year, and I think a lot of time, I mean, listen, this type of year, it's long, it's cold, I think a lot of our listeners probably do, get to a nice whiskey or something to help warm themselves up on these long winter nights. But yeah, I noticed I'm doing a lot on the different alcohol craft beers. I'm definitely gonna have to make a push to do more on the mindfulness, the exercise in short order. But absolutely wanted to highlight the cool things that you guys are doing around that. So you mentioned what's next. I wanted to pick up on that a little bit. So in the short term, it sounds like you guys are going to be doing more tastings, more events, things of that nature. Medium term and longer term, it looks like you guys are going to try some new things. So talk a little bit about that. I'm reading maple whiskey. Is that something? How far away from that are we?
We're a little ways away from that. We actually kind of stepped off that project for a little bit. And
so more of a medium or longer term on that one.
Right. Yeah, we're pursuing our gin next. So I'm actually working on some recipe formulations right now with that, and we're getting ready to run a few test batches.
Well, let me know if you need any help.
Sure.
Just taste tester, right?
Yeah. No, I mean,
Quality assurance.
I'm joking. I mean, historically, I've been into the craft beer, and I still am. But every once in a while, like a nice gin and tonic. So I'm definitely interested to see how that comes out. And you said, so what are the raw materials on gin?
Well, we're going to start with grain neutral spirit that's derived from the whey. So we're going to, use that product for the base alcohol. But then as far as botanicals, juniper berries are essential. They have to be in gin.
Yeah.
And, coriander, there's a few other things.
Hendrix puts like cucumber in there.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a thing.
There's a number of different things you can do.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, I
so
was
many.
reading.
We won't spoil it. This is proprietary, but I'm
Yeah.
just trying to get a little bit of
We
information
can't
of what to
share
expect.
all of our recipes. Come on.
Yeah,
So let's write them down. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, there's a lot of different botanicals you can use. The list is amazing. Just in kind of doing some research on gin, I've seen some gins that have up to like 10 to 12 botanicals, which is pretty complicated flavor. But that's what's kind of fun about gin, is because there's very little limits. You can do all that, and then I think that people find that it makes a more interesting drink because you can use different ingredients which are going to highlight different botanicals. So you might make a drink using like a gin and tonic, but you might use a flavored seltzer water, and it totally changes it because it enhances one of the botanicals in the gin more than the others.
Yeah, and then that's one of the things you learn from Dan Badgers. There's a lot of little small things that you can do here or there that actually end up making a big difference. But yeah, that's kind of the interesting, the confluence of the art and the science, right? You've got both the science of making sure the chemistry is all right, but at the same time, there's an artistry, right? There's what ingredients to use, when do you add them, what time do you add them. So, excuse me, a lot more on the way from Mountain Spirit Distilling. So on the longer term, let's talk about bourbon. Is that something that we should expect? We had a little bit of a discussion on bourbon. We're talking a ways out, but I mean, how ambitious are we with the amount of the variety that you're hoping to offer?
We're ambitious towards a bourbon. I think it's a ways out because it's a pretty substantial investment for us to do the barrel aging properly. Obviously, we would have to do so many barrels per month so that we continually have barrels aging out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a minimum of 2 years. And to be honest with you, I think we'd be looking at more of a 4-year age is what I would prefer to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's doable, but it's not anything that's going to happen
It's a
anytime
long-term investment.
quick,
It's
so.
not going to happen overnight.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
absolutely. All right, well, I'm patient. I'm
Yeah.
definitely hoping to get down and check this out, maybe this weekend, maybe next. So, let's end by talking a little bit about where you think the North Country is going, and kind of some of the things that you think are happening here that make you optimistic and very uplifting about where we're going, and maybe talk about some of the things that concern you about the direction of the North Country.
As far as uplifting and optimistic, I like the growth that we're seeing in the transportation industry with Bombardier and Nova Bus. So the other growth factor is the airport expansion is phenomenal right now. And I think that that's only going to get better as industry increases in the area, because it makes it easier, obviously, for people to conduct business. When you can get direct flights to Washington, and obviously the Florida flights are a big hit, especially this time of year. But that's going to only increase the amount of traffic and potential for the area.
Okay. Now, do you guys do online sales at all, or is that something that's
Can't.
okay?
Yeah, you can't sell liquor over the internet.
Okay, because I know transporting them is a huge problem, so maybe that's part of it. So you guys are kind of keeping a regional, local, marketing focus right now.
Yeah, for right now.
Because we self-distribute, but maybe in the future we might get signed on with a distributor, but that'll be a whole different ball game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you guys are hustling, doing it, going everywhere, and being very, very, You're out there. I mean, you
Yeah.
guys are definitely out there. I love what you guys are doing. So, I guess any parting thoughts for our listeners? Anything that they should know that they haven't learned yet about Mountain Spirit? Or
Well, I want to kind of add on Dan's part about the whole, the economy aspect of things.
Yeah,
in
please.
Plattsburgh.
Yeah.
I like to see I don't even know the right word, but I like how more people are more involved. They have the more mindset of a food from the farm or farm to table aspect.
I'm glad you brought that up. I almost added it to my outline because that is one thing that I like to focus on is the farm to table, keeping it local. So that's something you're trying to incorporate. Do you source your raw materials locally? All that good.
If we can't get it in this area, it's at least comes from New York State, and all of our ingredients come from this area.
Yeah.
But as far as like bottles or something like that, that's like locally sourced through bottle distributors in New York State.
Yeah, we still try to stay with, at least New York State.
Yeah.
So we're
Even though we're not regulated to, but we just like to, because why not?
Yeah, and I think it brings up an excellent point that maybe we can end with is as part of this farm to table and the buy local movement is one of the things we're looking to do through a number of different things. Talking to Dan Badger with the craft brewing is just changing the way that people purchase and changing the market share. I would like to see, obviously, far less people buying, your Millers or your Anheuser-Busch's because all that money goes outside of the area, right? Obviously, if people are buying Jameson or Hendrix or other types of drinks, that a lot of that money is not staying here in the area. One of the cool things about what you guys are doing and the power of the buy local movement is if people buy spirits from Mountain Spirit Distilling, that money stays here and it gets reinvested in the community. So that's another thing we're trying to do here is, try and get people to think about that and help spur local economic development by buying local and trying to source more of your materials in the area. And that's one of the movements I would agree with you, John, that I'm really, really optimistic about. And I think we're seeing some really cool things happening here. So
Yeah, and the more we produce, the more farmers will be able to supply with waste grains on our part, but it's a win-win for them,
That's great too. I mean, bringing in sustainability elements as well. So I'm really, really, really optimistic about what you guys are doing and in general the movement that we're having here in the North Country. So I wanted to thank Dan and John for joining us today on Waite Innovate. We'll try and provide some links to our listeners as far as where they can find you. Facebook, it sounds like. Is there a website they can check? I think, the website has some North Volume media stuff on there too. So definitely check out Mountain Spirit Distilling. Again, a fairly new business. They're innovating. They're incorporating sustainability, buy local. So thanks for joining us, and cheers for hopefully a happy and prosperous 2019.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So special thanks again to our listeners for joining us. North Volume for your continued support. We have the North Volume website. Check out all of our array of podcasts. We also have on Instagram, some Twitter. Again, what we're hoping to do here is to just keep the conversation going, but it takes a village, and we're asking our listeners to subscribe, like, share, comment, even review the podcast, help to raise the profile. We're trying to move the region forward, but it takes a village, and the more people we have engaging in this conversation and moving the region forward, the more successful we're likely to be. So any businesses, if you're interested in sponsoring advertising content, get a hold of Neil Battinelli. That's Neil at northvolume.com. So we're looking forward to having everyone back for episode 48 of Waite Innovate, only on North Volume.